Hi, I'm Caro, and I'm making a game where you take care of a colony of dancing mushrooms and defend it from foragers. And by the way, now I have a name for the game, and that is Boogie Fungi. I thought about it for a while, and I think this name represents the style and the, goofiness I'm going with. Anyway, let's get back to it. In this update, we have a lot to get through, but let's start with the work for the forager system. I had this list of things to get through for my first iteration, starting with remake the art for the foragers, actually forage a mushroom, spawn the foragers in the correct day, and respawn mushrooms. And also have a lot of other updates, including saving and loading, locked areas, UI changes, and more content. Let's get to it. First, the remake of the forager art. I initially wanted the foragers to be humanoid but featureless, to make them seem more like enemies, but that just didn't vibe with the rest of the game and the style that I'm going for. I have this set of foragers who behave slightly different from each other, and each one has a imaginative role for them. The first one I had implemented was the chef forager, but that was also not really showing in the design of the character. So I came up with a new design. And once I drew and implemented it in the game, I knew this was a better direction to go for. And even if they don't look as threatening, I think it fits better. Actually, forage mushroom. We last left off with the correct animation triggering for the foragers when reaching a mushroom, but nothing really was happening. So that is what I implemented now. The targeted mushroom is despawn, and this affects the amount of spores that this specific mycelium creates. But let's touch on that a bit, because the system also has some changes, the spore producing that is. Each occupied substrate will spawn spores per mushrooms in it at a certain rate in a specific amount, and this varies according to the type of the mushroom. For example, if I have a log where 4 chestnut mushrooms live, each spawns 1 spore, and they spawn 4 times a day. That gives me a total of 16 per day. Anyway, this is visible through the spore overlay, and I do plan to remake this UI a bit, but for now this works to give you the information. So now you see how this spawning process is affected. If a mushroom gets foraged from the substrate, and then only 3 mushrooms remain, then only a total of 12 spores is spawned that day. The forager spawning itself. I initially wanted the foragers to spawn during the party day, but I have too many things going on there and I don't really want them to crash the party. So now they spawn the day after the party instead. I currently have a randomness set at somewhere between 5 and 30 for just spawn, but I plan to change this to depend also on how many days the colony has, as well as the population of the colony, so that it's easier at the beginning of the game and it gets progressively harder. As for where do they spawn, they will always come from outside of the colony. The idea is they're just walking around, but something happens when you unlock a new area. Each of these spawn with at least one trail maker that directs foragers. This basically gives a new spawning point for foragers. I will later give the player ways to remove these nuisance from the colony, but for now, they're just there. Respawning a mushroom. I had this idea that because mushrooms are basically the fruit of the fungi, and it just made sense to me to have a respawning system in the game. So each time a mushroom is foraged, the substrate it belongs to is registered for respawning. And of course, this happens during party days. The system, however, is too forgiving as it is currently. So I will, in the future, add a constraint to the substrate, which is the time they can keep alive a mycelium without mushrooms. So if you take too long to throw the next party, the mushroom will just not spawn anymore, and the substrate will become available to be rehabited. Bonus point for the respawners: defense and safety. This is the next system that I will be working on, which is basically now that we have enemies, we need a way to defend against them. And it all starts with Mr. Honey, who is a sleepyhead but will surely awake when we need him. Among the other updates, I have now implemented saving and loading. I had this in the dev timeline for later, but decided to move it forward as it aids in the development as well. I also touched a bit on the locked areas earlier, but yeah, I gave some time to this. I am not quite convinced yet with the look of it, but the system as it is, it's working fine. I do love how they animate out though these vines. For the UI, I have given some love to the UI of Paulette, that is the invitation UI, as well as I created a version 1 of the landing menu, which has a nice transition to the settings menu. This one is a bit bare for now, but yeah, you know, version 1. And finally, the new content. I added a new log. As for the mushroom, I continued the in-progress ones that I had already started, and I started working on your suggestions. If you made it this far, you might as well like the video and subscribe. Till the next time.